All right. What's up? What's up? What's up? Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, man. Hope everyone is having a great week so far. Um, we got some boxing news that we're gonna cover today. All right, I'm gonna keep this rolling. Shout out to everyone that's been on the lives this week. This is my fourth live so far this week. Been very, very active on the channel, and I hope you guys are loving the content. I have more on the way, and um, I made a schedule for myself so I can be a little bit more busier for you guys. Um, as far as this week, what do we have this week? What do we have? We have a few cards, no major cards. Naoya anyway does. I mean, that is a major fight, but or major fighter, but it's not a major fight. It's kind of a tune up for him. It's a replacement opponent. That's gonna be tomorrow morning, early in the morning. If you're here in the States, early Friday morning, like 4 a.m. in the morning. So be on the lookout for that. I'm not going live for it. I won't be able to go live for it tomorrow. All right. Shout out to everyone that's here. Daddy, Life, Geo, Bandito, or yeah, B4 Dito. True Media Podcast. What's up? Um, yeah, so we got a new A tomorrow. I will be here Saturday night to go live to cover the Diego Pacheco Steven Nelson fight. Okay, and it has a decent undercard. It has Andy Cruz on in a good fight as well. Excuse me. So I will be here live Saturday evening. Trying to stay consistent, man. But I like doing these the wave reports and just covering a bunch of stuff at one time. You know what I mean? I like it, and I like to see the feedback and the comments and all of that. Um, I'm just gonna try to be as consistent as possible. I know you guys. I read the comments, man. I know you guys want more content, and I'm doing my best to give you guys content almost every day. You know what I mean? Um, so I appreciate that. A little bit off topic before we get into topics. I went to see Den of Thieves the other day. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the movie, the bank robbery movie. 50 Cent was in the first one. The second one just came out a couple weeks ago. I saw it the other day with my family. I was with my mom and my aunt Yvonne. Shout out to my aunt Yvonne. It was her birthday. We went out, and it was pretty good. I just thought that they dragged the movie out a little bit. It was good, but it didn't need to be like 2.5 hours or whatever it was. I think they showed us like 7 trailers for a movie for upcoming films, right? And none of them were good. Like I didn't care for any of the trailers at all, right? But the movie was pretty good, and even though 50 Cent wasn't in I was gonna say rematch, he wasn't in this second film. It was still a pretty good movie. I like bank robbery movies. I'm a big fan of bank robbery movies. Like all of them. The Town, Heat, uh, Set It Off. Uh, there's so many of them. But I checked almost all of them out. I've probably seen almost all of them. Yeah, he is definitely my number one. But The Town is up there for me too. The Town is definitely up there for me. Set It Off is up there for me. Um, there's a lot of them, but whenever there's a good, even like decent ones, like I thought Takers was decent. That's the one with Ti and what's the British actor Idris Elba. Some of them are good, some of them okay. Um, but I think he is probably the GOAT bank robbery movie. You got De Niro. You can't go wrong with De Niro and Pacino. All right. So whenever I see something coming out, like, oh, it's a bank robbery movie, I got to go check it out. But I think Heat and The Town are probably like two of my favorites for sure. All right. Um. All right. So let's talk a little bit, man, about a few things. So the four topics I wanted to discuss briefly today. Lawrence Okolie and Luis Ortiz are in talks, nothing official, but in talks to have them fight up a heavyweight, right? Sebastian Fundora is going to make his return against Shordell Booker. I did get a chance to look up Shordell Booker's resume real quick. This is pretty much a tune-up, for Sebastian Fundora. But I'll talk about that briefly. Okay, and Tevin Farmer and William Zepeda came to agreement to fight their rematch in March 29th, I believe. That's the date. And that should be a good fight. The first fight was a good fight. I got a lot to talk about that fight. I want to talk a little bit more about that fight a little later in this live. And then final, last and not least, Teofimo Lopez 3-fight deal. Okay. With the Saudis. All right. Bob Arum confirmed it himself on Fight Hype. I did watch the interview. It's supposed to be with Richardson Hitchens for a unification. Then possible Boots Ennis in the second fight up at 147. And then fighting the winner of Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia. That seems crazy. That's a crazy schedule. You know what I mean? But we'll see. We'll see. That's like a Canelo Alvarez deal. Like, you know what I mean? That's like something when these 3-fight deals and they're giving you the opponents and they're expecting you. They gave him that deal as if they expect him to win all 3 of those fights. Because those are 3 fights that he can lose. You know what I mean? Tough fights. But we'll talk more about that later. I guess I'll start out with Lawrence Okolie. Lawrence Okolie recently moved up to heavyweight. He moved up from cruiserweight after losing to Dylan Smith. All right. Lost to him, lost the title, took a little break, inactive for a little bit, moved up to Bridgerweight, got a crazy knockout. That was against who did Lawrence Okolie knock out? Rosinski, right? So he fought at Bridgerweight, won that fight. That was a title shot at Bridgerweight. Now I think the WBC, maybe the WBA, are the only 2 sanctioning bodies that actually recognize that title. You know what I mean? But it's basically in between the cruiserweight heavyweight thing. And he got a knockout. It was a crazy knockout, and then he went up to heavyweight, weighed over 260 for Hussein Muhammad, knocked him out quickly in the first round. 2 first-round knockouts back to back. And now they're in talks of Luis Ortiz. And I had to talk about it because I was like, damn, Luis Ortiz, 45 years old now. Last time I saw him in the ring, he fought Andy Ruiz, right? He got dropped in that fight, ended up losing a decision, I believe. And this was at a time where, PBC had some heavyweights. A lot of them started taking some losses. And, it was just like the end of the road kind of fight, like Andy desperately needed a win. Luis Ortiz had beat Charles Martin, right? And he knocked him out, but he got hurt or dropped a couple of times in that fight. One thing about Luis Ortiz is that his first, as old as, and we've had jokes, we've been joking on this channel about Luis Ortiz being old his whole pro career, damn near. Right? I think we've been joking about him being old the entire time he was boxing, because he never looked his age, whatever his age at. He's at 45 officially, but we've been saying he's been 45 for like 10 years now. I think at 35, he looked like he was about 45 years old. But one thing, all jokes aside, one thing about Luis Ortiz that fell apart first was his legs. I think his legs was the first to go. You know what I mean? He's always had power. He's a good boxer. He's a southpaw and everything. He gave Wilder a tough fight in the first fight. You know what I mean? He gave us some crazy knockouts, but at the end of the day, when it came to age, they always say power is the last to go, but when it came to his legs was the very first to go. His legs has been poor since the Wilder fight. Since the Wilder fight. So I can see why Lawrence Okolie and his team would take that fight. and be in talks of it. Again, it's not confirmed because Lawrence Okolie knocking out that guy Muhammad in one round is not going to tell us the full story of what he can do at heavyweight. Um, yes, he's a big dude. You know, he's always been very tall, but he's a heavy dude now. That's cool. But what can you really, really do against the other heavyweights? You know, and I'm not even talking about like the top 10. I'm talking about like the top 20, top 25, which I'm not even sure if I could put Luis Ortiz at that level. So to be honest, I'm not mad that it's Luis Ortiz. I would expect it to be someone around that level at this stage because he's not proven at heavyweight, you know. And is he going to be 260? Because at 260, he looked a little chubby. You know what I mean? Thank you, AO. Appreciate that. I just saw your comment. He looks a bit chubby. Um, is he gonna stay at 260? Is he gonna bring it down a little bit? I think he was about. Let me pull up his box rec right here. Yeah. So is he gonna stay that heavy, or is he gonna bring it down a little bit? You know, because I mean, he would have to. I would think. You know, against certain opponents, he may have to be a little bit more mobile. You know what I mean? Like, especially against guys like Luis Ortiz. You know, maybe not older, but guys that pressure you. Like, I'm not saying he would, but like, let's say if he were to fight like a Derek Chisora type of style, he might not want to be so heavy in his upper body. You know, um, but yeah, looking at this, he knocked out Rosinski. He was at 223, and I thought he looked good at that weight. I'm not saying he can't be heavier, but maybe drop down to like the 240s. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm not sure. I guess we gotta wait and see. You know, and I think this is what the process is. How old is Okolie now? He's 32 years old. So he's not the youngest guy, but he's not old. He still has a lot of time to do whatever he's trying to do. Hopefully he can get on some of these cards with Sorty. But if he does, you know, the opposition is going to be a lot more like tougher than this, you know, especially with the money that they're going to pay. I can't see him being like a champion at heavyweight. But I can see him maybe getting a couple good fights for a lot of bread. I could see that. But championship level, like at heavyweight, I can't really see that, you know. Um, but you know, he's a British fighter and he can definitely put himself in position to get a big British fight. And they saying that this fight will happen in the UK, which is understandable. You know, Luis Ortiz, no one was really thinking about him. I think after he lost to Andy Ruiz, he had like one tune-up fight where he knocked the guy out like one round. I didn't watch the fight. I just looked it up on his box rec. But, you know, at the end of the day, Lawrence Okolie, I think he can get involved in a couple of good fights. One fight I would like to see him in is with Dillian White. You know, there's a lot of bad blood between those two. And I know there's sparring stories and all that with them. And I think it'd be a decent fight for both. You know, it'll be a risky fight for both, but it makes sense. You know what I mean? There's a lot of these fights now, if there's like public sparring stories, beefs, and all of that, and if you're a fighter and don't really got much going on, I don't see why not make the fight, you know. And I know Dillian's probably gonna want a big, big bag because he's getting up there and he's pushing towards the end of his career, and he's had a tough schedule over the year. He's been taking a lot of losses. I can see a Lawrence Okolie maybe fighting, you know, like a Dillian White. That would be a British fight. Maybe even like a Joe Joyce, you know, maybe even like a Deontay Wilder, you know, like if Wilder doesn't get AJ or a big, big name, I can see even Wilder and White, like all of these guys that's still in the outgoing generation that haven't fought yet. I can see some of these fights going down. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I don't know. Um, Trey Chi, he says, "What up, Wave? What do you think about Tio and Matias?" Well, it's not happening no more. You know, it's not going down. That's not part of the 3-fight deal. That was something that was offered to Tio a couple of weeks ago, and um, he turned it down. You know what I mean? So that's a fight that Top Rank offered. I don't know if he turned it down because maybe he was already in talks with Turkey Al Sheet and the Saudis. So I really don't know why, but the amount of money they offered him, to fight Matias, not bad. But it didn't work out, and things are not really working out with Tio and Top Rank right now, Bob Arum. So I don't really know, but that's not the fight. I mean, listen, that was a good fight to me. That was a good matchup. But Tio is being presented with a good other good fights too, with Hitchens and possibly Boots. But we'll talk more about that later. All right. So let's get to the next topic. Sebastian Fundora, real quick. Um, I don't know, like he's coming back to fight Shordale Booker. I pulled up this article from Red. I'm sorry, what's this site? All right. Bad Left Hook. Patrick Stumber writes about it. I did read this a little earlier before I came live. And Mike Copinger is the one that delivered the news. But when I saw this, I immediately thought like, okay, he needs to get back in the ring. He has 2 titles. He needs to get active. Something needs to happen. But when I saw that this was going to be his next opponent, I immediately thought, okay, if this is the quality he's fighting, that means they're building him up to fight someone tough right after. And I'm thinking that it's probably going to be a unification either between the winner of Virgil Ortiz Jr. against Israel Madrimov, or it could be a unification with Bakram Murtazaliev. All right. I think it's one of those two. Crawford's tied up with this deal that he's going to do with Canelo Alvarez. Like, I don't know if he's going to have multiple fights. We don't know anything yet. I know they're pushing to have that fight in the fall, but Crawford is holding the title. But I don't know if he's going to get involved in any of these unifications before fighting Canelo because these are all risky fights. But when I saw Fundora fighting Booker, I said, okay, they're just trying to get him back in the ring. It's been a year since he beat Tim Tszyu. They're trying to get him back in there with someone easy before going into a bigger fight. And I think that bigger fight will probably be the winner of Virgil Ortiz Jr. Against Israel Madrimov. The whole Canelo Bud thing kind of put, I don't know, like it's hard to really predict what's going to happen at 54 now. Because after Bud beat Madrimov, I would expect, I would have told you before, I would expect Bud to fight Virgil Ortiz if he was to beat Madrimov in a unification. But now it looks like Bud is going to be out of the picture leading up to a Canelo fight. And now these 3 guys that are champions are most likely going to have to unify. Plus, they're still going to have mandatories and stuff. There's still other fighters at 54 that's right there, that's right in position to get a shot. You know what I mean? So I'm not really sure how this really plays out, but I do believe that this type of fight here, because I looked up Shordell Booker, I have to watch him fight. Because I'm still going to break it down and be fair. I'm going to always look at the fighter and not just judge based on what BoxRec says. But I seen that he got knocked out by Ammo Williams in 1 round. You know what I mean? So when I saw that, I was like, I don't know. And that was the one name that, caught my attention when I looked at this BoxRec. I didn't see any other top end, high end fighters on his resume. So the moment you step up and you get knocked out in the first round, that's kind of like this guy Brock that Keith Thurman is fighting. You know what I mean? There's no other notable names on his resume outside of Liam Paro, who knocked out Brock in one round. You know what I mean? So it's like this looks like a similar situation. It's a tune-up fight, and I'm expecting a better quality fight in the very next fight right after this. You know, hopefully a unification. All right. But that's the way I look at it, man. It's really not much. You know, I'm gonna check out this guy Booker out at some point. But um, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I seen that Bohachuk did call out. Bohachuk did call out Fundora, you know, but Fundora after this is after the Spence fight fell apart. After that fight fell apart, Bohachuk was one of the first guys to call him out. I think Bohachuk, even though he's not a champion right now, I think he should get first dibs at a title because of how close that fight with him and Virgil Ortiz was. I personally think Bohachuk did barely enough to pull it out, but I think he did enough to pull it out. Um, I think he's very deserving of getting a title shot. You know, so I don't know where he's ranked at right now, but I think he should be getting another shot really, really soon, possibly this year. You know, so whoever's left, this well, I don't even want to say whoever's left because at 54, you got Charles Conwell, you know what I mean? You still got a lot of fighters out there, you know. So, you know, you got Jamel Charlo. Is Jamel Charlo coming back? Is he gonna get a title shot? You know, because technically he didn't lose anybody. He just moved up. Well, he didn't lose anyone at 54. He just moved up to fight Canelo, you know, and that's when I was saying with Bud, it's kind of like the same situation because if these guys are moving up to fight Canelo and that's the priority, that becomes a priority. The only thing is sucks because Bud is still holding his title. You know what I mean? So we'll see. All right, we'll talk more about this once we get some more news. All right, so let's talk about Tevin Farmer against William Zepeda 2. Okay. First fight was a really, really good fight. I think a lot of us slept on Tevin Farmer. Um, Tevin, to me, good fighter, um, very defensive fighter. Is nothing personal. I wasn't expecting him to beat William because Zepeda, you know, he's throwing 1,200 punches a fight. He has power. He's shown to be pretty durable up to that fight. I just knew that even if Tevin was able to be defensive and counter punch him and look for openings and stuff, I didn't think he would do enough to be winning like that. You know, he was knocking him down. Um, he was making. It's not like Zepeda wasn't high volume. He was still high volume. It's just that the punches had no effect because Tevin was doing such a good job rolling the punches, turning the punches. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those punches that Zepeda was throwing wasn't really landing clean. A lot of them was off the shoulders. You know, a lot of those punches, Tevin was turning with it. So a lot of them didn't have that same effect that we seen in other fights that 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 William Zepeda has been involved in. So I'm glad we're getting a rematch because I thought the fight was really close. I was covering the fight live, or maybe I think I was watching it here and then I went live right after. You know what I mean? Just to give you a recap. I figured they were going to give the fight to William because you know he's the undefeated fighter. You know he's the guy that they're pushing. He's the golden boy fighter and all that. It was a golden boy card. I just assumed that it was going to go to William because it still was close, even if Tevin might have edged it. You know what I mean? Even he's edged it. He did start to get tired a little bit in the second half, but he was so effective throughout the fight. You know what I mean? He was so effective. His power just and Tevin has never been like a huge puncher, But when you land as clean as he did, you know, and counter as good, and the timing was perfect, it's hard not to drop someone when you can hit them so easily. You know, at some point, you're gonna go down, and that's what happened with William. Um, but one thing I wanted to talk about. Let me have a sip of this coffee real quick. All right. The main thing I wanted to talk about when it comes to this fight is this. Tevin Farmer, all right, was complaining about the lack of drug testing. He said there was no drug testing before the fight. There was no drug testing after. You know, he was saying for both of them, there was no drug testing. And I don't think he was coming off as a sore loser. It's more like the way I look at it is William Zepeda was ranked number one in all four sanctioning bodies, right? He doesn't hold a title, but he's been the number one guy. And my rule is, you know, if you're in those high rankings of all the sanctioned bodies, you should be getting drug tested. You know, at a fight at this level, you should be getting drug tested. You know, now I'm not saying he's on something, but you know, people are going to question it because of the amount of punches you throw per fight. You don't slow down at all. And if the man is saying, like, look, this is the way I look at it, because David Benavidez has been saying the same thing about Morrell. Like, I don't know if things change, but look, I look at it like this. If you are a fighter and you got a fight coming up and you're supposed to be getting drug tested, but you're not, I think you should be vocal about it. I think you should be reaching out and communicating with the sanctioning bodies and seeing what's going on. Why is there no drug tested for a fight? You know, you should be reaching out to them. But if you're not getting anything there, I think it's good for fighters to be vocal about it. Because one thing I know about being a boxing fan is that there are double standards with this thing. You know, when especially when it comes to the fans, people are very quick to call out when they believe someone is cheating, depending on who they are, depending on where they're from, depending on what they look like. People were very quiet about this. With that being said, I believe that if you are a fighter and you are concerned about lack of drug testing, you should bring it up. If you are the other fighter, the opposing fighter, and this information is not true, like if you're a William Zepeda and you've been drug tested, okay, you should expose a guy like a Tevin Farmer who's saying that you neither one of you are getting drug tested. You know what I mean? So if a fighter is just crying about lack of drug testing and you are the opponent and you are getting drug tested or something, expose that fighter. But if there's no drug testing going on, shouldn't you both, if you want to be clean and you want to be fair, shouldn't both of you want drug testing? You know, so with Farmer moving forward in this rematch, I would hope that he signed a contract. Yes, Trey, I'm going to speak on that now. Hopefully, you agreed in this rematch that there would be drug testing. Hopefully, you didn't sign the line and there's something in there that's saying that there's no drug testing involved, which is ridiculous because the sanctioning bodies, if this is a ranked fight, the sanctioning bodies should be enforcing that anyway. But I hope for his sake, being that he was vocal about it, hopefully in this time around, hopefully they agreed to have drug testing leading up to this fight and after the fight. So everything to be fair, we won't have this issue. I think it is an issue though. It is an issue. It's an issue for every fighter fighting at this level. Once you're the top contender, you know, once you're the number one or the top five in a sanctioned body, and you're like, you're basically a mandatory. You know, you're in a position to fight for a title at any time. At this stage, you should be getting drug tested. You know, so I like the rematch. I love the rematch actually, but and this is supposed to be an out in Cancun, but let's make sure we're good when it comes to the drug test and stuff. Because what I don't want to see is two things. Um, well, I don't want to hear or I don't want to see that these guys are not getting drug tested for this fight. And if Tevin Farmer is going to complain about it again, I would like for someone to interview him and question him. Like, did you guys, is that part of the contract? Did you guys agree not to get drug tested? I don't want him to lose and complain. You know what I mean? Both sides. What's going on? And I'm tired of the double standards, but I want someone to clarify. Like, I want Oscar or even William Zepeda to address that. Are we getting drug testing here? You know, are we getting drug testing here? Because it's already out there now. You know, and best believe, I know for me, I'll speak for myself. I'm definitely going to keep my eye on that moving forward, not just with Tevin, but with future fighters. You know, um, because this is a dirty sport. This is a very corrupt sport. So once you hear that there's not drug testing, no difference from Benavidez and Morel. Like, since he brought it up now, have they been drug tested? And I'm gonna pay attention to that. I have my eye and ear to that because I'm just assuming with all these championship fights, and it's been announced that Morel and Benavidez is now going to be for the WBC Mando. So whoever wins that fight, they're gonna be mandated to fight Better Biev if he is to win against Bivol in the rematch. Gotta pay attention to it now. All right. All right. Last but not least, Teofimo Lopez. Last topic of the day. 3-fight deal. Bob Arum. This has been rumbling around a little bit for a few days, but Bob Arum confirmed it. You know, he went on Fight Hype, did an interview. You know, they asked him questions about it. And, you know, Bob Arum and Teofimo's not really getting along. Teofimo's name has been out there a whole lot this past few weeks with guys like Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Sabrio Matias, Richardson Hitchens. He's been calling out Bud, his Boots Ennis. So supposedly, yes, Albert, yes, boxing needs a union to protect the fighters. And hopefully, and I don't want to put all this responsibility on Turkey Al-Sheikh because I think that's what I think a lot of us is doing that. No, and I know he seems like he's the king and he's like the biggest piece of this whole puzzle with the sport. But if he is to create a boxing league, and this all becomes like an organization type thing, like similar to the way UFC is, there should be some sort of union at some point to protect these guys, especially with as dangerous as it is. We got to involve in that space too. We got to involve. I know Anthony Joshua was working on something. I don't believe it was a complete union, but I know it was some kind of program for retirees. All right, some point last year that was some news. But yeah, I agree. Teofimo, 3-fight deal. It's like it's like great news because of the quality of the fights. It feels a little far-fetched though. It feels a little far-fetched. And I say that because not that I don't think Turkey is good for it. I think Turkey is clearly good for it. I know Teofimo tends to kind of burn bridges though, if you get what I'm saying. Like, I need to see it to believe it. As a fighter, I don't think he's a duck. You know what I mean? He's a fighter that wants to smoke. He's wanted to fight a lot of fighters, and he's had the toughest schedule to me, outside of that new four king thing that they got going on or whatever, right? Finding the guys he fought leading up to Loma, beating Loma. Yes, he lost to George, but eventually coming back, fighting Josh Taylor, fighting Sandor Martin, fighting Jermaine Ortiz. I don't particularly think this guy's schedule is easy. He actually fights guys that's stylistically wrong for him. So when I hear this schedule, I believe it. I do believe that Tio fights his best when he's stepping up. I think when he's fighting guys at a lower level or guys at his level, I think that's the worst we see him. I think when it's time to show up, we get the Richard Comey fight, or we get the Lomachenko fight, or we get the Josh Taylor fight. When he's stepping down, we get Steve Claggett, Jermaine Ortiz, Sandor Martin. Oh, I wouldn't call Sandor Martin a step down, but it wasn't the name. You know what I mean? It wasn't a big level up in that fight. And like I said, Jermaine Ortiz, Sandor Martin are stylistically just wrong for him. You know what I mean? They were high risk fights with low reward. You know what I mean? High risk fights, low reward. And even though he came out with the decision, a lot of people were scratching their heads. I mean, I went to the Sandor Martin fight, and I thought the fight could have gone either way. You know what I mean? Especially with the knockdowns. But Teofimo Lopez, the 3-fight deal was supposed to be Richardson Hitchens at 40 as a unification, which is a good fight because I guess they can make it a Brooklyn fight, if that's what they're going to do with it. I don't know if it's going to be in Brooklyn, but I mean, Tio says he's from Brooklyn. I think his father might be from Brooklyn. I don't know his story, but Tio's from Florida, you know. But they can sell it as a Brooklyn fight. They can have it at the Barclays. That's a tough fight because Richardson is tricky. You know what I mean? I predicted Richardson Hitchens would beat Liam Paro. Even though Liam has been more impressive, at the end of the day, the styles make fights. I think Hitchens is going to be a similar type of style as Martin and Jermaine Ortiz. I know he's not a southpaw, but he's a very good boxer. He moves well. He's a defensive fighter. If Tio is forced to lead, that's where he struggles at. That's where he's really mainly struggles at in a lot of his fights. If you create opportunities to counter Teofimo Lopez, that's where you're gonna have success. With him coming forward. So that is the first fight of the 3. The second fight is supposed to be Jerron Bruce Ennis. Now, one thing is this, like, what is Jerron going to be doing himself? Now, I know he has to fight. It seems like everything is going to work out between him and Stanionis. So I guess if Tio wins his fight and Jerron wins his fight with Stanionis, that these two are going to fight each other after. I don't know. Hearing 3-fight deals is one thing, but hearing 3-fight deals when the 3 opponents are all high level, dangerous, risky fights, I don't know. I think that's more of a vision than an actual on ink, like these are going to be your 3 opponent type of thing. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think all of those fights are tough. Like, I can see Tio losing the Hitchens. I can see Tio losing to Boots. And the third fight is supposed to be the winner of Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia. I think in a perfect world, that works out. But I'm willing to put money on that. I don't think that it actually happens in that exact order. You know what I mean? Because, like, look, even if Tio does end up winning some of these fights, the first fight or even the second, how does he look winning? You know what I mean? How is it, like, I just don't know, man. This just sounds like a crazy deal, but I think it's more of a vision. I think the 3-fight deal is real because Bob already confirmed it, because the Saudis already reached out to him about it. But at the same time, does it happen exactly this way in this order? That is the one thing I'm like, I don't know about that. Injuries happen. Shit happens in boxing. Like, I don't think it happens in that order. But I do like the schedule. I do like the schedule. I do like the Hitchens fight. Um, Again, even that fight, I don't think it's a great style for Tio, but I know for Hitchens too, I know if that ends up being a close fight, like if that ends up being like a similar situation to like a Jermaine Ortiz fight, where I don't think it's going to be much action, because one thing about Hitchens is he really likes to slow down the fight, you know. Um, he likes to like change the pace of the fight. That could end up being it's gonna be a chess match. And it could probably be a little boring. Like Liam Paro fight was very, very boring. You know what I mean? Hitchens, in order for him to have some action, he would need to fight like a Gustavo Limos, try to like a pressure fight, like legitimate pressure, hunt you down type fighter. You know what I mean? So I just don't know. Like again, I give Tio credit. Like, he does have a tough schedule. He is a very good fighter, and he does have like a tough schedule. His resume is filled with a lot of good fights. But at the same time, um, I don't know. It's just hard to really like, even with Turkey, with all of the money that they're spending on these fights, Tio tends to mess things up. He kind of burned bridges, man. And he makes a lot of comments. You know, um, it's been a whole headache over there for Top Rank. I mean, he thought Matchroom and them robbed him in the George Kambosos fight. The whole mess with Triller and like 5 different deals going into that George Kambosos fight. The lawsuit thing that could potentially happen between him and Top Rank. I just don't know, man. And he had a lot of stuff going on in his personal life too. So it just seems like there's always some drama when it comes to Tio in and outside of the ring. So I don't know. I think it's big news. So I definitely had to address it. But I just don't see things going exactly this way, even if it is in writing. I don't see it happening. I gotta see it to believe it. Plus, he has to win those fights. All right. One foot out the door said Tio is always a mental case. Yeah, he's a little off. He's not all right in the head. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. AO says with Saudi Arabia during their cash round, wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Nue versus Usyk for undisputed. Joke. Yeah, I get it. Am I watching the fight tomorrow morning? Yes. Am I going to be live tomorrow morning? I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be. Sorry, I'm not going to be here. With the work schedule, I'm not going to be able to stick around tomorrow and do the live. Yeah. So, but I will be here Saturday to do the live. All right. But for a new way, I'll do a review or recap. I did do like a quick video on it yesterday. I'm expecting, either a first or second round knockout or anything in between 1 and 5 rounds. Really depends if he wants to get the rounds in. You know what I mean? Really depends on what Inoue wants to do. I'm not expecting like some crazy upset though. All right. All right, man. That's my time. You guys have a good day. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the thumbs up, please. On your way out, everybody smash the like button on your way out. And I will see you probably tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow evening when I get back home to talk about Inoue. All right. And then I'll see you again on Saturday for the live commentary. All right. So y'all have a good one. Peace.